Hey guys, guest tonight, Brett Eichenberger and Tobe Jobson are going to be talking about their documentary, which focuses on Bigfoot and the paranormal. Be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope you say great. I think I hear you saying great. I have like eagle ears on, right? Eagle ears, eagle eyes. I don't know. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'm making my adjustments. There we go. And I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means we can help you. It might take us a while to get to you. California is a big state. We've got mountains. We've got we got valleys. Well, of course you got valleys. We have mountains and valleys. We've got oceans, a lot of coastland. We've got high desert, low desert, and a lot of rural areas, which is why it might take us a couple days to get you. But in that case, we do have psychics on staff who can call you and do a discussion with you about what may or may not be going on. And in most cases, they can settle the activity down until we can get to you. Again, it would only take maybe 2 or 3 days for us to get out to you because of the size of the state, but we'll always get to you. Anyway, welcome tonight. Our topic tonight, something near and dear to my heart. You guys know I love having Sasquatch investigators on, researchers. I love having those guys on. I lived up near Happy Camp for a while, and it was just interesting because I would go to the local diner and sit there, and the researchers would be coming in from the field. And it was fun because they would come in and have dinners and stuff, and I would be able to listen to what they had experienced out in the field. So I'm really excited to have these two gentlemen on today because they've got this great documentary. They've made one documentary before this, and now this is a second documentary about the big guy. So I'm excited about that. If you're watching from Facebook tonight, and a lot of you are, please be sure to hit that follow button if you haven't done so already. Always looking for followers, always looking to build up, right? Always, always, always keep that momentum going. Also, if you're watching and you like what you see, please be sure to hit a thumbs up, smiley, heart, whatever. Show me some love. Show me some love of how you feel about the show. Because what that does is Facebook has what they call the FYP. Okay? And when Facebook sees you doing smileys and stuff like that, and even commenting in the chat room, it takes notice. And it grabs our show and puts us out further to other people. I mean, way out on Facebook. Okay, so that helps me out, right? So if you could do that, that would be great. Same thing with YouTube. YouTube works similar. If you haven't done so already and you haven't checked out our YouTube site, it's youtube.com/@California Haunts Radio. There's over 800 videos sitting over there, and it's all different topics, cryptids, right? Everything you could think of. And there's so many videos that it used to give me a headache when I went in to even look things up. So I turned around, and I'm still in the process of doing this, 800 videos. I'm still in the process of putting them into folders under individual topic. So if you want to find something, say, on Sasquatch, you can go into a cryptid file. You like medium Nancy Matz? Boom, she has her own file over there. Anything you can think of. Alien abductions, it's all there. So that's the easy way to find stuff on the YouTube site. And again, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. We're trying to hit our 1,000 subscribers. Hopefully by January 1st. We're about 250 away right now. So we're real excited about that. We're getting there. We got a big following on Facebook, and I want to thank everybody on Facebook that follows us. I think you guys don't realize it, but we've got over 5,000, more than 5,000 people following us on Facebook right now. So I'm real excited about that. You guys have been really dedicated, so thank you. TikTok, I've got 2,500 people following me. So we're building up. Just like, you're sitting at home, you're watching the show, and maybe your cousin comes in the house. It's the holidays, right? Say, hey, there's this little show over here that is really good, and I keep watching it. Check it out. That's the way you do it. Like I always say at the end, If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated us tonight, share it with 5 of your enemies. We're just trying to get the word out. Okay. All right. You can find us along that line. Again, you can find us on Facebook under California Haunts, California Haunts Radio, Sacramento Seers, Seers, as in Greek Seers. You can find us over on Instagram under Ghosty Gal. That's all lowercase. You can, again, I give you the YouTube address is youtube.com/California Haunts Radio. You can find us at TikTok under California Haunts. You can find us at Twitch under Cal Haunts and on Twitter under California Haunts. And of course, we do have a meetup site, California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team. Okay, now that I'm out of breath, my 2 guests are going to be talking about their new documentary, and I'm really excited to have them on. I heard them on another show, and they've got a lot of cool evidence to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on, and they can tell you a little bit about themselves and what they're doing. So here we go. Hello.
Hey, Charlotte. How's it going?
Good. I'm out of breath now. Future. Tell me about your...
I love your hat, by the way. Your hat is fantastic. I feel like I need a hat, a Christmas hat.
Thank you. It says creepy holidays. Creeping holidays, yeah.
It's amazing. Great film. Great film. I love it.
Thank you. So tell me about you guys.
So I'll let Tobe tell you about Tobe, but I will quickly just say that, you know, I'm a filmmaker. I've been a filmmaker for most of my life, and I've done narrative films, scripted films, and I've always had a fascination with Bigfoot, going back to when I was a little kid, you know, some 40 some odd years ago. And we had a chance to finally do a documentary about Bigfoot. And when I say we, I'm talking about my wife, Jill Remensnyder, who's the producer of both of these films. And we had a chance to do a Bigfoot documentary because she has a love for Bigfoot just like I do. And so we started a Flashy Beauty Bigfoot Revealed during the pandemic year of 2020. And it's been craziness and new discoveries and adventures ever since.
Fantastic. And Tobe, you're a researcher, correct?
Yeah, you know, for me, it started as a question whether or not mysteries could be followed up on. I lived in the little town of Springfield, Oregon, and it was just one of those things. You didn't grow up in the Pacific Northwest without hearing about Sasquatch. And so I found that, you know, over time that you could find tracks, you could meet witnesses, and these would maybe coalesce with an eventual experience yourself. I never really thought I'd have a sighting. It just seemed in the beginning so elusive. You know, 5-second sightings are pretty common, roadside crossings. It was kind of like hitting the lottery. But what I've come to find out is that, you know, Bigfoot doesn't seem to be a rare occurrence. And that should shock the hell out of people, that this is not a rare phenomenon. We'll talk a little bit about why that is.
Sure. I remember my first. I never went out, you know, on a research investigation, but I did. You know, my family was outdoorsy, so we would hang out in Mount Rainier. You know, like I said, Happy Camp. You know, had a lot of stuff going on at Happy Camp with us. But I remember that's how I got into it, because I remember I didn't even know what it was till we made a trip up to Mount Rainier, and you know, we went through these towns that had these statues, and I thought, what is this thing, right? So I got my first book, the Bigfoot Case book, up in Mount Rainier, and I must have been old about probably 8 or 9. And then it took off from there, because people used to laugh at me because I memorized all the stories, you know. And then when we moved up, you know, up to Northern California and had the chance to, you know, really spend a lot of time in Happy Camp and sitting with the researchers up there, I really got into it more and more. So
I'm really curious about your Happy Camp experiences, Charlotte, because Jill and I passed through Happy Camp last June on our way down to the Patterson-Gimlin site. And it, you know, I gotta say, we kind of blinked and missed it. Not a lot up there, and it's just kind of way out of the way. But yeah, same thing of like what you were saying with researchers and stuff, man. It's a really active area up there.
Oh yeah. And I remember, you know, there was one guy, he's probably still up there. I can't remember who it is now, because it's been a while since I've been up there. But he had in fact, my car is green. It's center view red line, so it's like we were green color. He had a big old SUV like that with Sasquatch Investigator on the side. So I don't know who the hell it was, but it was always impressive when he came in because you could hear it barreling in, rah, 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 as it came out of the woods. Yeah, it was interesting because there's a museum there, a Sasquatch museum. They got footprints there and stuff. And they would also hang out like they would come out of the field hungry, so they would go to the diner and they would sit there and tell war stories, sitting around the tables, and that's what made it fun. Because I would always wait for them to come in, so I could hear the stories about their encounters and whatnot, and it just made it even more intriguing for me. I just wish I would have gone out with somebody. I just didn't do it at the time.
Yeah, it's never too late. It's never too late. And just to interject, I may know who that SUV Sasquatch investigator is. Because I know a guy that lives, and I think Tobe might know him too, but his name is Simeon Hein. And he's got something that is very similar to that, and he lives not far from there. So I know Jerry's been out there. So
that's
it might have been him.
Yeah.
Who
but
knows?
I remember being a paranormal investigator too, and when you're a ghost investigator and stuff, Sasquatch is like on the fringe for us, right? And I remember the first time we went out there, and I told my family, I said, "God, don't tell them I'm a paranormal investigator. Don't tell them, But then after we started going on a few times, I thought, "Oh hell, I want to hear about this stuff." So off I went, listening to these guys and stuff. So Tobe, you mentioned having a sighting.
Well, yeah. So, these things take time if you're looking for it. That's kind of the weird thing about Bigfoot. The harder you look for it, the more elusive the phenomena gets. But yeah, it started with some footprints in the little town of Springfield, Oregon, circa 2005. And then it ended with, if you're going to see Bigfoot, you might as well see its big feet. And so I was lucky enough to see, what can only be a Sasquatch as far as I'm concerned, from the shins down behind my Jeep. And, there wasn't much else to say about the sighting except for the fact that it ran through the gravel in front of the driveway without making a sound, which we'd kind of come to realize was a possibility. For something that large, it really shouldn't be. Right. But, it being as close as it was, I should have absolutely heard it. And again, we can talk about why that may be. We kind of get into that in this documentary.
Absolutely. In fact, I wanted to ask you, you did the first documentary, and what made you decide to do the second documentary?
The second documentary really kind of came out of the fact that we were getting these stories when we were doing the first documentary, and we quickly realized we couldn't fit everything into one film. So basically we were going to try and capture the entire Bigfoot experience. And, a month or two into the process of shooting the first film, we thought, this is clearly needing to be two films, which is fitting because the Bigfoot community is sort of semi-divided, if you will, between the quote unquote woo and the flesh and blood. And so the first film is more concentrated on the flesh and blood and teases the woo a little bit, if you will. And then the second film is all about all the paranormal stuff that so many people have experienced, and I don't have any sort of numbers or data on the experiences, but I would probably bet that it's 3 or maybe even 4 out of 5 experiences, maybe a little bit less than that if you count the road crossings and things like that. But there's definitely something paranormal or something that we don't have the science to explain yet going on.
When you guys talk about paranormal in relation to Bigfoot, I know, there's stories of like a blue light, him appearing out of a blue light or going into a blue light, blue orbs floating around. What do you classify as paranormal as far as he's concerned?
Gosh, I think paranormal is anything that science can't really explain right now. And that's kind of a fuzzy area because quantum mechanics, quantum physics, which is just super complicated, in a lot of opinion, I think a lot of scientists agree with that, is kind of on the fringe. I mean, there's a lot of things right now that scientists have verified that would, to the normal person, be classified as paranormal. Just really strange things that it can do. And so I think that, people have to realize that, it's easier to kind of lump the paranormal into like scary stuff like witchcraft and devil worship and and really, it's not, you look back in human history, and that's kind of what people have done through generations is if you can't explain it, then it must be evil. And that's not really the case.
Right.
This is why it's so important for us to understand this and study this. I mean, there was a time in human history that electricity had kind of had that same kind of feeling, like lightning was punishment from the gods. And we know that that's not the case. But so, we're kind of dividing everything. I mean, if people see a cloaked Sasquatch or can barely see a cloaked Sasquatch and orbs and stuff like that, we're trying to say, hey, look, there's a science behind this.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think? I mean, honestly, let's talk about this. As far as this thing is elusive, but I mean, there's a lot of woods out there too. There's a lot of mountain ranges out there, but it does seem to be elusive. So, do you guys think it's coming from it's coming from aliens, or where do you think this thing might be coming from?
I don't know if it takes the woods to really appreciate this phenomenon, which may shock a lot of people. A, this phenomenon is not rare, and B, the woods are only the beginning of the story. Yeah, you can have an experience behind the tree line, but the witnesses that I've talked to in private and now in public, and Brett can confirm this, is that this stuff will follow you home. The hitchhiker effect is something that people are familiar now because of the Laura Skinwalker Ranch. But when you enter a Sasquatch area, you're entering a place generally where they're comfortable with a thin veil or a portal or an opening.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get immersed in one of those areas, you kind of have a half-life that sticks to you when you go back home, especially if you're open to it and if you're entertaining it, if you're negotiating terms of how you guys are going to interact.
Right.
And that stuff can, it can be tough for the newbie, especially, but I've kind of grown accustomed to it. And that's, so what is that? I mean, this is not supposed to be from the world of science, right? This this belongs in the parapsychology world of studying magic, right? And the occult. So there's this overlap of the supernatural and Bigfoot, and I really call it magic. I think we're in a really interesting place where science is going to try to explain something that won't allow you to explain it. And I think we talk about that again in the documentary because man's ego is super fragile and influenced into the decisions they make. And whatever the phenomena is doing, it loves to shatter men's egos. And I've watched that happen. Brett's watched that happen. It seems to mess with evidence, and it won't let you gather enough data on it. So that goes into the trickster element that the Native Americans talk to. And so that's where I'm at, is that we just kind of sit back and wait for this phenomena to present itself. But honestly, I would love to study this stuff if it would allow me to do it more occasionally. I just think it takes a really unique spot to do that, and I don't think I live in that spot anymore.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of build on what Tobe had to say there. This is expect the unexpected. Once you really dive into it, as a case in point, in Oregon and Washington, where Tobe and I both live, wolverines are extremely rare. They're endangered, and we recently they caught one on a trail cam up in the Mount Hood National Forest. Well, about 3 months prior to that, someone saw one on the coast of Washington on the beach, which has zero to do with their habitat. Right. Any wildlife biologist would tell you that there could never be a wolverine on the coast, on the beach, because they live in the Cascade Mountain Range, number one. Number two, they're so rare that you would never see one if you were hiking through those mountains. Yet there was one on the beach. And guess what? Somebody got crystal clear photographs of it.
Wow.
And had they not gotten crystal clear photographs of it, it would have been just as good as a Bigfoot story, because they're that rare. They're that, endangered. And so I think Bigfoot really falls into that same kind of category, and thankfully this individual had a camera with them. And, a lot of times people don't have the peace of mind even to take out a camera when they see something that kind of freezes them and locks them in their tracks. But with that being said, that does not make these things rare because there's not photographs of them. There's not visual evidence of them. Like Tobe said, they're out there and they are out of their environment. I heard a guy talk a few weeks ago in Yakima about how there's a guy on the Washington coast that had them living in the brush, not in the woods, but in the brush. And so it's like ghosts or anything else. You don't know where you're going to encounter the paranormal. The paranormal can go where it wants to, go where it pleases.
I've had a guest, along that line. I've had a guest on here, a woman who lives amongst them. They live in her area directly. She's not afraid of them. She's under the impression that there's a family, living around her, and she says that they bring her gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that, and she'll even sleep out in a tent, like several yards from her house because she can hear them out there. So I mean, over the years, there's very few stories, unless somebody has shot at one or something like that, to where they get physical with anybody. I mean, they seem to be really peaceful.
Yeah.
When they're out there. So I can understand a story like hers, happening. Barbara Shoup, you guys probably know that. I've talked with her. And it's just fascinating to listen to the story she's got too, as well, about this. Do you think, like you say, let's go to the paranormal, and like you talk about the evidence, it's hard to get the evidence. Do you think that's what's going on? Because in the old days, the camera equipment that people had wasn't that great, right? So you can kind of see the explanation for blurry photos and all this. But with the newer camera equipment people have, plus these cell phones now that are really great, we're still getting blurry photos. So do you think that that's part of, like you say, that's part of some kind of paranormal thing that's going on to keep everybody from getting these clear photos?
Yep, absolutely. And what's interesting is you just brought up Barb Shoup, and in our second film, Flashing Beauty Paranormal Bigfoot, we went up to Mount Rainier and talked to Barbara Shoup and talked to her about the cloaking video that she got. Mm-hmm. And if you guys haven't seen that video, check out our film because we break it down. But what's so interesting about that video, Charlotte, is that she filmed what she saw with the naked eye was black. Mm-hmm. It was solid. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of people talk about how they see cloaked, individuals or Sasquatch or whatever you want to call them, but they've seen cloaked something or other in the woods, and it's been cloaked to the naked eye. In this particular case, the cloaking took place to the lens of the camera. Mm-hmm. So the camera, it somehow manipulated the camera so that it wouldn't have been captured visually, which is kind of mind blowing, if you ask me. Absolutely. I haven't heard of that from anybody else. I haven't seen that. And, I would more or less bet my life on this footage being actual cloaked figure, because I cannot debunk it with my visual effects expertise and, 25 to 30 years of video work. So, there's definitely something up with that, as far as how they're staying invisible, how they're manipulating cameras. It sounds crazy, but I think it's true.
Well, in these cases, like with this woman that I've had on, them giving her gifts. I mean, is it possible at all that that they could actually like her and be giving her this stuff, or is this just something that you think is just going on that it's a natural thing for them to do?
It seems like an initiation of some kind. We get into it in part 2. I'm familiar with the incremental gifting approach from what can only be described as Sasquatch, with the latent footprints and handprints and hair samples and sightings in proximity to where these usually small, lost, shiny objects with a mossy patina are set in unusual places on the porch, bones, animal kills, in the house and locked areas. And, gifts of significance. If your friend was here with us right now, I would ask her, just like, have they brought you something significant to you emotionally, or something that you've just spoken about? So, you're able to rule out and debunk the debunking that somehow you're being hoaxed because of the fact of these emotional ties of the things and the unique places they leave them. And I think a lot of people don't entertain that to be something that is worthwhile doing. I really think it is worthwhile doing, because if you leave them something in return, the experience grows to perhaps an eventual piggyback ride, because this seems to be the way it's going as far as how they gain trust. One of the guys I know, I think it took over 2 years in his pristine research area for them to accept a food gift from him. That's an awful long time to work an area, but he knew that they were there, and he was
Right.
willing to wait it out. And now that is built on to, full on sightings, and according to him, healings of some kind. And we get into that in part one as far as Sasquatch
Right.
healing possibilities, which segues into part two.
Right. The other thing I was just thinking too is when you talk about their ability to appear and disappear.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into a client of mine ghost hunting, and she told me, she was a psychic, and she told me that her first encounter with I'm going to say ghost, right? This woman was walking across her front yard, and to her it looked like a door had opened,
Mm-hmm.
and this being simply stepped up and went through this doorway, and that was it, disappeared.
Mm.
I mean, could these sightings with Bigfoot? I wonder if it's a similar thing. That's how they're getting in and out.
Tobe's pointing at me like I have an answer, but a theory. I've talked to many people who have seen portals. They've seen portals at Skinwalker Ranch. It's been documented. I believe portals are real. There's been a lot of hunters and whatnot that have seen portals, and of course, David Pilates touches on portal for some of his missing 411 cases. I don't know that they look like a traditional doorway per se, but
Right.
I think there's something to that. I mean, I definitely do, and I think that the Sasquatch, ghosts, other cryptids, because there are other cryptids out there that occasionally come into this world. I think that that's the way that they're coming into this dimension. I think that that's exactly what they're doing, is they're traversing through dimensions.
As a Bigfoot researcher, how hard is it to really get out there and find this evidence? Because I mean, you're always, and I'm not going to say always, but it's one of those cases like, even me as a newspaper reporter, I go in when somebody gets murdered, I'm talking with the police, I go in after the fact, and I'm trying to pick up the pieces and figure everything out. Is it really difficult to go in after the fact, after there's been a sighting, to try and track down that evidence?
It gets exhausting. It's kind of a spendy habit if you're driving out to the remote countryside often. You can just imagine over a period of 5 years the burnout that would happen to somebody who's perhaps even looking for the wrong type of evidence. Looking for battery drains is a big one. Camera malfunctions, hearing strange popping and clicking and door slamming sounds in the middle of nowhere. Who's looking for that in the Bigfoot world? Well, if you want to find the truth quicker, you look for this crazier stuff. I've talked to a lot of hunters that think this is the nuttiest thing ever. They would never look into the subject matter because they are the alpha predator in the woods, according to them. So if they don't have an experience, how the hell are you from Little Spring, Tucky, Oregon, going to ever have a, you know what I mean? So it depends what you're looking for. But, one of the guys we talked to is a guy named Henry Franzoni in part one of our documentary in particular. And we just released some extra footage of Henry. And Henry was the first person to tell me to go looking for Sasquatch in strange place names areas. So places that have devil, places that have spirit or ghost mountain or skookum, Baboon Creek. How do you think that got its name? These are the places where this veil is thinner and Bigfoot exists. This is why the natives or the pioneers name them these areas. And those are the places where you're going to have your mind blown with the evidence. And that's the quicker way to do this.
Well, yeah, there are places. I agree with you. There are places like up in Cave Junction, those ape caves up there, and then, places like that where there are a lot of sightings. Why do you think? And this is just me, because we just talked about these portals and stuff. Why do you think there's more sightings in certain areas than others?
That probably comes down to just ideal habitat. I think, we're talking about these things being paranormal, but I think they have a flesh and blood component. There's been, a bunch of witnesses that have seen these things, with deer, over their shoulders, or they've seen them, sneak up behind a deer and crack their neck or what have you. So they're obviously eating something. There's been scat samples that have been found. So, Dr. Meldrum can get into this a lot more about how they really need a rich biosystem and whatnot. But that doesn't limit them. There have been sightings in deserts. There's been some sightings in Joshua Tree National Park. And if anybody's familiar with Joshua Tree, there's not a lot of trees out there. So, who knows? But I mean, there's certainly, it's like I've always wondered how there could be hotspots in Ohio, because Ohio is,
sure.
There's a lot of urban areas in Ohio. It's a small state, small as compared to California, Oregon, Washington. But that's a good question. I would encourage folks that are curious about that to go to bigfootmap.com. And Scott Tompkins has done a great job. In fact, we just posted on our YouTube channel today, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. Just about an hour and a half ago, we posted an interview from the original film with Scott Tompkins, where he talks about some of the different areas and some of the states that have the most sightings. I think Ohio is number 3 or 4. It's way up there.
Wow.
But I mean, if your listeners out there really like to see data, that's the place to do it. There was a guy that left a comment saying that he plans his hikes around what he sees and finds in BigfootMappingProject.com. So I would check it out.
I mean, given Ohio, real quick, the Ohio area is filled with these enigmatic mounds, including the Serpent Mound. No one knows who built these mounds. The Native Americans said that they didn't build them. They seem to go back before the natives. They have reverence to them, but I think that it's something that they found. There's a lot going on in Ohio as far as these pre-civilizations, and I think Bigfoot might be attracted to these high energy places where there were civilizations before. They've been seen near rock quarries. That makes no sense as far as why they would be hanging out, on rocky cliffs all the time, unless there's something to do with them mining or building. Maybe it's a hunting ground of some kind, or maybe it's an observation point for people that are down below, something like that. But they just show up in very strange places, and Ohio is kind of the least of them. I've heard of them showing up in close to New York City. They've been seen in the suburbs. They come into towns. Like a suburban Squatch thing is a total phenomena that's underreported.
Wow.
So yeah,
I just find this so interesting because, like you say, these sightings vary so much, of where they're located. How hard is it for you as a researcher to track, like I said, to track this stuff down? When you're hearing these reports, what do you go through as far as procedure goes to look into all this stuff?
Well, I don't know what people did before the internet. It's made everything more confusing, frustrating, but it's also made things way easier for the fact that you can kind of go on TikTok and YouTube and say, hey, there's something going on in Quartzville, Brett. You want to go check it out? So these kind of things pop up all the time. So that part has made things a lot easier. In the beginning, like I say, it was much more frustrating because, I was kind of being a good boy, minding my P's and Q's with the APER community. And they're basically saying, well, you can't do it this way, and you need to go there and make sure that you do X, Y, Z, and never talk about the crazier stuff, because then you're just completely blackballed. And everything was wrong. It was all upside down and inverted from the truth. And that just took time to kind of find my rhythm and my crazy, guys that I ended up following, crazy gals too. And now we're one of them.
Indeed.
Tell me what it's like to film a documentary, because you have to be able to, put the pieces together. Are you guys using storyboards to do this, or are you just getting out in the field and recording stuff?
So doing a documentary is quite a bit different than doing a regular narrative feature film per se. Where we cast actors and we write scripts and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, do storyboards. Sometimes we will do like a storyboard or a script thing for a documentary, but that's only if we're doing recreations or something.
Mm-hmm.
What's really interesting, Charlotte, about both of these documentaries is we just follow leads. It's kind of like none of us are journalists or investigative reporters, but that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what we are in a sense. I mean, we don't claim to be. We're storytellers, and we know how to tell a good story. We're all trained in storytelling, and Michael Ferry, our cinematographer, knows how to tell a story in a frame, in a picture. And really, it's just Jill and Mike and I, and sometimes it's just Jill and I on the road, wearing a bunch of different hats. We wear so many hats, we'd make the Mad Hatter sane. I swear, it's it's a fun time though, and what's nice about it is we can be quick, we can be nimble, we can get emotional with our interview subjects. We typically shoot with 2 cameras because that makes the interview flow a lot better. When you can cut to different angles, it doesn't get so stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, we just kind of keep our eyes and ears open for really interesting stories. We follow leads, and there's definitely a couple of stories that we've shot that haven't had a chance to make it into the documentaries that we hope to bring out later because they just didn't fit in the overall scheme of things. But that's pretty rare, actually. Most of the stuff that we shoot ends up in the final film.
Is it easier to talk with people now about this subject than it was years ago?
Yes, unequivocally, and that's changing rapidly. That's changing with the best thing I think that ever happened to us was in December 2017, the New York Times doing a serious article on UAPs, and from that very moment, we started seeing a sea change of folks out there going, well, maybe there's something to this, and why it took so long is beyond me because UFOs, Bigfoot, and even ghosts to a certain extent are the 3 biggest stories in human history. I mean, take your pick, and there's a lot of reasons why I would kind of nudge Bigfoot almost to the very top because of what we're learning now about them and how they're able to, like Tobe said earlier on, use their magic and whatnot, and Bigfoot, of course, could be some sort of a relative or a cousin to humans. So yeah, I mean, it's just the whole thing is just an adventure, and it never stops. It just keeps on going. We get stories all the time.
As a researcher, Toby,
Mhm.
when you do go out, what are you looking for? I mean, as far as like evidence or how you track it.
Well, one of the latest things I'm looking for, like I said, is not only electronic anomalies, um, and that can happen suddenly. If you have a full thing of batteries when you leave the house and you hop out of the car and they suddenly drain, and they do that a couple times in an area, and then you find evidence like a tree break, or you find what we call leaners, which is just a kind of a redneck name for branches that are leaning up against a tree in a stack. That to me is a key element. Also, boulder fields or rocky creeks, any kind of creek egress where there is a game trail present. Those are worth following up on. Now, these are also places where there's a cluster of people that go missing. That's one of the trademark things that they find is that these people that go missing, if they're ever found, can be found in and near an abandoned creek system or a boulder field. So, I by no means think that Sasquatch comes in one variety of being completely benevolent, magical, Harry and the Hendersons thing. I think they fit the personality profile of a person, of a human type subject with full on culture and personality. But there seems to be, they're so good at being sneaky that you can imagine being outwitted and in danger and met at the hands of something like this. There's a lot of brutality to the human species, I don't even want to know what these things are capable of.
That's it. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm just fascinated by what you do to be able to go out there and do the research on this.
Mm-hmm.
Has there, when you take evidence into somebody, like for instance hair samples or maybe even scat, who do you go to, and are they cooperative, or how's that work? Because I would think that you take it to somebody in mainstream and they're going to laugh you out the door.
Yeah, I give all my scat to Brett and his wife, and they house it for me. They're really good about
We had to buy a
keeping
new refrigerator and put it in the garage.
They have a special freezer.
It's out of control.
I think I just uploaded a video to TikTok where I was talking to my buddy Darrell, is the property owner where all this stuff is happening. And in the video, we have an animal mutilation that I'm in question of as it being a gift to us from them. And I say in the video, like, Darrell, you got a freezer? I'm super excited, right? Like, come on, please say you got a freezer, man. We got ourselves some roadkill. And this is the kind of quandary that you find yourself in. Now, I've never found a cattle mutilation, but those are the kind of situations where it's just like, how much evidence do you want to keep? The hair samples obviously are the easiest thing to take home with you. But then we interview Mel Skahan, right? One of the Yakima Native Americans. And the consequences, and this goes back to what Brett was talking about earlier about how evidence is hard to come by. Well, maybe you're lucky not to have evidence sometime, according to Mel, for the fact that there are consequences of these hitchhiker effects following the evidence home.
Right.
But we get into that in the documentary as well. So it just turns into how far do you want to go down the rabbit hole? And I'm crazy enough to really just want to go all the way down the rabbit hole.
Now, when you talk about this, let's get to the hitchhiker effect now. We talked about that briefly in the beginning of the show. What kinds of things happen? I mean, you bring stuff home with you, and what kind of experiences do you have?
Well, in the case of the most typical thing is that objects will show up that in my case, there are objects that were spoken of or have something to do with a recent event. An object for an object, a like object near a like object. Walking sticks, for example, on more than one occasion, set near other walking sticks, or on the company of a conversation the other day about a walking stick. That's a very common thing for what I would call these Sasquatch experiencers to go through, that initiate activity and want to have some kind of relationship with this unseen hairy hand that comes to town once in a while. And that seems to be the way the things go as far as looking out for the beginning of this. It's just, how far do you want to push this stuff, because it amps up really quick. And oh, by the way, these experiences gradually grow over time in size and activity. We talked to another witness named Jack, who has an amazing encounter and talks about shape-shifting. And Jack experienced, he's got some audio that I don't know anybody who's got audio like this witness Jack does. It sounds like it's almost daring him to record it. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And I just think that's the way it goes, is that they give you more and more over time.
Speaking of audio, what do you guys think of the Sierra Sounds?
I'll just say right now, I think the Sierra Sounds are some of the greatest evidence that we have for these things. I think they're 100% authentic. And full disclosure, we are now working on a documentary about the Sierra Sounds. That's our next film. And we have already started filming. We've interviewed some of the other folks that have never gone on camera. And so I've got a perspective, just from the past couple of months, going down to Central California and visiting with some of these guys that have been going up there for 30 or 40 or 50 years. A perspective that other people don't have. And I can tell you that it raised the hair on the back of my head to hear what these guys had to say. And of course, what Ron has to say is become famous because of the books that he's written. But there's a lot more to the story. And there's no doubt in my mind that what they got up there on those recordings is a family of Sasquatches or a group of Sasquatches that are communicating amongst themselves and trying to initiate some sort of communication with these camper guys. And, you know, and it's like Scott Nelson, who is in our first film, says, you can't fake this. It's impossible to fake this. And if there's anybody that would know that, it would be a cryptolinguist from the United States Navy. That's his job, you know, to know how something like this would be a fake. You know, it's a matter of national security. You know, this isn't just some like fly-by-night guy. And Scott didn't believe in Bigfoot prior to this. He, you know, he could have cared less. And when he heard these sounds, was able to analyze these sounds, he heard something with massive lungs that were making these vocalizations. So, yeah, I mean, I would encourage everybody to look. You know, if there's somebody out there that kind of really doubts the existence of Bigfoot, or if they're on the fence, read Ron's book, Voices in the Wilderness, because Ron is a 100% straight shooter. Both Tobe and I know Ron very well, and he tells it like it is, and he's telling the truth. And you know, further on down the road, I think those tapes get more and more important as historical archives.
And I think there is about 3 or 4 people that had been sent up to the high Sierras to this remote campsite to try to debunk this stuff, including Joe Hauser, who runs the Montana Vortex, and he was trying to find out, you know, as a scientist, how they were doing this. And that wasn't Scott Nelson's initial thought, is he was hearing something that sounded fake. As a cryptolinguist and a voice expert, he was shocked that he heard language. And that's what's so shocking about this, is that this is what people have been saying, including Albert Ostman, since the turn of the century, is that they have this, you know, it sounds like samurai chatter, right? That's what they call it, like an old samurai movie. But it also kind of sounds, and this is what other witnesses say, and you can hear that in the Sierra sounds, is you can hear, it almost sounds like a deaf person trying to communicate. It's always right out of earshot, but it's close enough to where you can hear it. And, you know, Ron has like Brett says, it is the Patterson Gimlin of the voice of Sasquatch world.
And Ron also has seen, we could say, paranormal activity along with this as well, because I know he's reported like blue orbs and things like that, you know, just before these things appear or disappear.
That's correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Charlotte. And other people, and I'll just be kind of vague about this, but many other people see paranormal activity up there that is even weirder than what Ron has seen.
Very interesting. Now, you know, talking about your documentary now, Dr. Simeon Hein does a little bit for your documentary. Tell me about that.
So Dr. Simeon Hein wrote a book called Dark Matter Monsters. And when we first set out to make the Paranormal Bigfoot, I really wanted to find somebody out there that was doing research on this paranormal activity, on this, you know, so we could equate it to the things that people are witnessing with Sasquatch. And lo and behold, in my inbox one day, I get this article about Dr. Simeon Hein and what he's doing, what his research is about. And I like leaped out of my chair, and I was like, this is the guy. We've got to interview this guy. This is exactly what I'm looking for, because I know, you know, I just have this gut instinct that, you know, we can explain this with science. And so we contacted Simeon and sat down with Simeon we spent the entire day with him up in Moscow, Idaho, and Pullman, Washington, both kind of next door to each other. And we went to his old alma mater, Washington State University, and did an interview with him. And we were just like, Mike and Jill and I were just blown away by some of his ideas, some of his theories. They all made sense. They all connected. And I feel like Simeon's got a lot of great evidence to back it up, including some research that's been done, you know, by a doctor over in Japan on cold fusion and ball lightning, and, you know, some of these scientific things that could explain how a Sasquatch can move so fast, why people don't hear them moving, why they can cloak, why they can, you know, why footprints will stop in the snow and they won't turn around, like they're just evaporating into thin air or transitioning through portals. So And I'll just say this much too, that we did a screening in Utah at Phenomenon in September of this film, and there was a government guy there that worked for the Department of Energy, and he told us that we pretty much got the science right, that Simeon got the science right. But that's all he would say because everything else was classified that he's working on. So we feel like, Simeon has done a great job of putting this evidence together, and I would suggest everybody go out and get his book, Dark Matter Monsters, if you're interested. But yeah, it's just really fascinating. There's one now.
There's one now, yeah.
Is it autographed though, Tobe?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. I was going to say, we can get it autographed for you.
What makes your documentary different from the TV shows and the other documentaries about this topic?
Well, I think there's a place for everything out there for the TV shows and other YouTube videos, and we're a part of that. We're a part of that community. We're all storytellers. What sets us apart is our approach. We're taking more of a classical National Geographic, and I hate to compare ourselves to National Geographic because that's an institution, but we're doing something that that has a different look and feel to it. And, I'm trying to break the mode as far as our philosophy is concerned, because we feel like, a lot of Hollywood really can kind of sensationalize the subject matter and make it into, something that ends up selling ads instead of telling the truth. And I think that lends itself to the craziness, this public image. And so, we're hoping to start changing that public image. We want to start conversations. We want people to say, I watched this Bigfoot documentary, and then the other person says, oh yeah, really? And then the person says, no, you really need to watch this one. It's that kind of a thing. It's like, we're not trying to convince anybody, but we feel like, if we can hold up the interviewees to a certain high standard and the eyewitnesses to a certain high standard, then people will actually start to take notice and actually start to listen that what is going on here is not just a fluke, it's a phenomenon. And it's a social phenomenon, really, because people don't realize this, but the people that are outdoor adventurers or have hunting buddies, what they don't realize is there's a lot of people out there that aren't talking about these experiences because they're too afraid to. They're too afraid to be judged, and they have a post-traumatic kind of stress reaction or disorder that goes along with this sighting, and so they block it out. We talk about this in the first documentary. We interview a clinical psychiatrist who goes into how the brain processes this information. So there's so many more components to it than just a big, huge 10-foot tall hairy beast knocking down trees and running across highways. It gets really deep, and I think that's something that we need to start paying attention to.
Now, not so much knowing what but suspecting that these things are able to travel, maybe travel dimensionally. Do you think there are any that actually exist here among us, or are they coming back and forth all the time from wherever they're coming from? Do you think?
I'll keep it quick, and I'll let you finish that with Tobe. But my personal opinion is that they're coming back and forth on a per needed basis because they're able to.
I think so. The Native Americans say that they walk between two worlds. They're on a priority point on the Pacific Northwest totem poles, which is the bottom section. I just saw one today in front of a casino, an obvious Sasquatch. And so this is also the way that UFOs are being described as well, flitting about. For the most part, ultimate domain control over the airspace or the spaces in between, right? This is the new jargon that is coming out of Pentagon officials, that we need to gear ourselves to understand this phenomena as it being interdimensional. What does that look like, and how do you engage it? Well, you just kind of sit back and wait. I think you can alter your consciousness and experience this stuff. Yay. Let's all do it right now. But I think you don't have to pull a Joe Rogan and start popping mushrooms to do this.
Right.
I think laughter will initiate an altered consciousness. I think music, drumming in particular. We didn't talk about this enough, but there's something unique about drumming that goes back, to the roots of Africa, really. Certainly the Sami people as well, Native Americans, big time. And that is really the first way I would suggest people go out into the woods is, go out and sit on a tailgate with a good friend and bring a drum with you. It doesn't matter if it's a pretty drum at all. It could be an upside down, 5-gallon bucket. They seem to be entertained by that and engage you with that. And you may hear something back similar, but you're also opening something through drumming, I believe. And, you got to be careful with what that could be, but that would have something to do with the vibrational state and how vibrations can change density. And that's a different kind of territory that Simeon Hein would probably have to be involved with to understand. But that's where we are with where I research and how I research.
I was just going to ask you because you mentioned that. It's kind of like what I do with trigger objects, right? So you're trying to get a reaction. What about hitting the side of trees? I mean, I've seen people do that too.
I just think that that's ridiculous at this point. I don't know anybody who's seen a Bigfoot hit the side of a tree. Now, they may very well do that because it does sound like a Louisville slugger cracking. Brett's heard it. I've heard it. If you're in this long enough, you will hear it. Down in the Olympics, it kind of sounds like a wet log hitting the side of a wet log, which is perfect for where they're at, right on the coastline. So what is that? Man, oh man, I don't think it's them hitting the side of trees. I think you can get a response with that, but I think that has to do with them flitting about between these two worlds. And that's almost like the consequence of them going through the back door or the front door. You're hearing the after effect or the inertia of this paranormal consequence. And so, yeah, you could do that. But if you want to have these prolonged experiences that are unique, I say go out there and kind of, look like you're going out there for a luau. Don't go out there in camo. Show up in a loud, crazy shirt like you're not hiding. Have a good time. Don't go looking for them. Find a cool spot. You're going to stay a while. The longer, the better. And go to one of these crazy place names. And that's the way I suggest having an experience.
How long does it take you guys to make the documentary?
So we started filming in June of 2020, and then it was released in June of 2022. And then we captured some of the footage for the sequel, of course, while we were doing the first film. And then the second film came out. It's kind of a soft release, October 17th. We're hoping to be expanding to Amazon and some of the other platforms here, within, I'll just say by the end of the year. So yeah, it takes quite a while. There's lots of times of pause, because of the weather or rescheduling or something like that. But I would say that probably 19, 20 days of filming and then another like 4 to 5 months of editing. It's not a quick process. I'll just tell you that much, especially when it's just 3 people. I mean, typically these things have many more people, but and I'm not complaining because I think having a small crew to do a documentary is really ideal for a number of reasons other than burnout. It's nice to be able to kind of maintain that consistent voice and control. And like I said before, to go places in one car, so it takes a while. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Last question. You're standing on the Vegas Strip, and there's a couple other guys, 2 or 3 guys that have documentaries, on Bigfoot out there. How do you get people to watch yours?
Man, that's kind of the best question I think I've ever heard, Charlotte. Wow. Tobe, you go first.
Oh man. Well, there's there's one angle you could go with. It is Vegas after all.
Right.
um, Flash of Beauty. It's called Flash of Beauty, Brett. I mean, you might as well embrace it.
Get their attention.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, sure, there might be some gentlemen's club named the Flash
There you go. Yeah.
Right,
in Vegas. I had not thought of that.
I would tell them to go to the Linktree site where it's a hub of information. Just put up that giant banner, Linktree, A Flash of Beauty. Once they get into that hub and they see that teaser that Brett and Mike put together, the trailer rather of part 1 and part 2, these trailers are pulling people into this documentary. It's just such an accomplishment of what they've done. It's such an important film to see, even in the world we live in, where we have a lot of important visual things happening to us. This film is not a distraction. It's embracing the truth in a beautiful way that has never been told quite like this before. And I just would encourage people to watch those trailers, because those trailers, they're going to take you to an hour and 45 minutes roughly of something very similar, but way more in depth and strange.
Okay, cool.
If I'm standing on the Las Vegas Strip and there's a couple of people there, I'm going to look at them and say, "What are you guys doing here in Las Vegas? The excitement's in the forest." And I'll prove it to you. Watch these documentaries and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Guys, it's been fun. Thank you for coming on. I so appreciate it. How can people find you?
So the best way to there's 2 great ways to find us. Facebook, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed on Facebook, and our YouTube channel, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And what's cool about that, what we're doing is we're posting the entire interviews, the raw footage for the interviews. We've cut out the questions and, coughing and that kind of stuff, but everything else is being left in, and we're doing it for virtually every interview that we've done for both films. So those are going to be rolling out every few days. We're going to do quite a bit more towards the end of the year. And then once the second film has been out there for quite a while, we'll start doing those interviews as well. And, look, we just want to share knowledge. We want to share information. And we hate to think that, people like Ron Moorhead or Peter Byrne or Henry Franzoni, we hate to think that this stuff would be left on the cutting room floor. I mean, nobody learns anything if nobody ever gets to see it and experience it. So I would highly recommend folks go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, because you get notified as to when we drop new interviews. We dropped another one tonight, and watch them. And people are going to be stunned when they listen to these interviews and watch what these men and women have to say.
Absolutely. Again, thank you guys so much. Love to have you on a later date to talk, more about your work and everything. I mean, this was terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlotte. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Take care.
All right, you guys have a great rest of your week, and good luck with your documentary.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oops. There it goes. All right, that was absolutely fascinating. You guys know I'm all about Sasquatch. Okay, we got a little change of schedule. Mary Muter could not be with us tomorrow night, so I'm flipping the schedule. So tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. will be the interview I did with Anna Maria Manalo. That's going to be over at the YouTube site, youtube.com, youtube.com/ at California Haunts Radio. So check us out. It's youtube.com, right? YouTube, yeah. See, it's one of those nights. youtube.com/ at California Haunts Radio. Anna Maria Manalo will be over there tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific for that interview. And then Mary Muter will be with us Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific. So that will be a live interview. So I just want to give you guys a heads up on that. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio, and we're just trying to get the word out about our little old show. But anyway, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And I will see, I will be in the chat room tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific over at YouTube. All right. See you there. Have a great evening.